Sargon has made a video on his shitposting channel where he asks for people to explain to him why everyone is so uppity about Candid these days. Again. I've been trying half-heartedly to explain this on Twitter, but the amount of nuance in 140 characters is very slightly limited. I do apologize for not including my ugly mug in this rambly ramble. I know my barely 40 subscribers love it. Here's the thing. This is not about Candid. It's about ethics in video making. Personally, I don't think anyone involved in this entire debacle acted maliciously. I think that people made mistakes and found themselves legally unable to correct them. I think that, especially Shu and Skeptic, did do things wrong, but they didn't wring their hands and go, "We shall exploit the goyim by selling out." That's not what happened. Candid in this whole situation is just a stand-in for a violation of principles. And those principles are not, by the way, don't do ads. Do all the ads you want, I don't give a shit. If your ads are poorly disclosed, as they were with Candid, I'll frown, but do make money if you want. Part of the problem that people have with this is that the product being endorsed runs counter to the principles the people advertising it are trying to sell us through their videos. Imagine if Bernie Sanders suddenly endorsed Hillary Clinton. Oh wait, that did happen. And did you lose all respect for him? Many people did. I lost most of it. And while political YouTubers, which is what most of the skeptic scene is, are not running for office, they are selling opinions and assessments. They are, in a sense, comparable to politicians. So when they take money from corporate sponsors, whose products are diametrically opposed to the viewpoints they're trying to sell their audience, especially when they do it in a way in which they purport that they are in line with those views, that is something that needs to be talked about. Saying, then stop consuming their content and ignore them, why do you have to talk about this all the time, is comparable to saying if you think Hillary Clinton is a corporate shill, don't vote for her and stop talking about it. You see how that doesn't work? Hillary has power, and so do the great figureheads of the skeptic scene, whether they like that or not. When Hillary says she's against the TPP, but really takes money from anyone and everyone who is pro-TPP, someone needs to shine a spotlight on that, and it needs to be discussed. And that is really where the crux of the issue lies. What most people are concerned about is not so much the sponsorship of Candid, because again, I find it difficult to believe that especially Shu and Skeptic did this with any malicious intent, but the purge that happened to anyone shining a spotlight on it, primarily harmful opinions. He's the one who watches the Watchmen, if you'll forgive my superhero comparison, and when said Watchmen work hard to discredit him when he uncovers something they did wrong, that is a very strong indication that they have more to hide and want a lack of accountability. What most people come to the skeptic scene for is people deconstructing the bullshit that is flung at them by the media, hence why I call them the Watchmen. And for that to work, there needs to be a relationship of trust. When the person who looks into whether that trust is warranted is purged from the scene by the scene's most powerful elements without actually addressing their concerns, that looks fishy as fuck and gives the impression that these elements are not who they purport to be. Let me unpack this real quick. You, Sargon, and many other skeptics make a significant portion of your money by taking the bullshit the media says and pointing out the fact that it is indeed bullshit. The media then responds by using their institutional power to try and destroy you, and that makes it look all the more disingenuous. Harmful Opinions does the same to you. Like it or not, you are the all-stars, the Avengers, really, of the skeptic scene. So he takes a closer look and finds that some of you are doing fishy shit. So he points that out much in the same way you point out the fishy shit the media and political establishment does. So you use your power, which you do have, and you know it, to discredit him and make it all go away. Instead, you tell people this is autistic, dumb, and they shouldn't care, and they should just ignore it. You try to discredit him using nefarious tactics, and of course you do this a lot smarter than the media because you're actually in touch with your audience, and frankly, Shu on Had making money for a fishy ad isn't quite the same as CNN telling you you're not allowed to look into the Podesta emails. Then Harmful Opinions is hacked and loses everything because he finds himself at the barrel of a powerful corporation. His family is harassed, which, by the way, may very well be a part of corporate culture, but seeing as I hope you haven't become a selective cultural relativist, it's still something that needs to be condemned, which I think you did between screeches of telling people not to care about this autistic shit. But instead of jumping to the man's defense for being silenced by powers much larger than himself, which you would do and have done for pretty much anyone else in the skeptic scene, you stopped talking about him. You informed nobody that his channel was taken down, or where to find his new channel, which is something you, Sargon specifically, have done for people whom you vehemently disagree with, just because you think their opinions should not be silenced. Yet somehow, when the opinions are harmful, you're suddenly complacent in that silencing. Do you understand why people find that a bit odd? Shoe on Head filters certain words that might lead to controversial discussion of her and her boyfriend's mistakes. Much like certain internet news portals and certain sites featuring little blue birds try to control what is allowed to be said on their platform. Do you see the parallels people are seeing? TJ Curb stopped supporting Teal Deer, whom he used to like, but solely based on the fact that he associates with certain opinions he does not tolerate because they paint him in a negative light, then makes that known on his platform. All this is especially odd, seeing as he tends to not give a shit about how people see him, yet here he makes an exception. Why are these opinions so harmful to him? Like it or not, you are essentially, and I already regret using this term, the skeptic establishment, being as you are the most powerful individuals within the skeptic scene. For you to purge someone with tactics that most people can easily see through is a cause for concern to many, and I do in fact think that the biggest wrongdoer in this affair is you, Sargon. When you say you weren't paid, I absolutely believe it. Despite everything you've done, that is still a baseline of trust I have in you, because my amazing people skills tell me you do not like to take corporate sponsorships. What I also think is that you view all of this as a general, as evidenced by the fact that you not only refer to the whole thing we are waging against the mainstream media as a culture war, which is absolutely correct, but because you consider an alignment with Candid a tolerable evil on the way of gaining institutional power. I definitely consider you to be one of the top 3 most intelligent skeptics in the scene, and you are, like it or not, the most significant figurehead. You understand the big picture, and you understand why these principles need to be protected, and that's the reason why many people follow you and your heroic exploits. However, you allow these transgressions against said principles to transpire because it's, in this analogy, your highest officers and best soldiers that would get hurt if the truth came out. Then you take the officer who pointed the corruption out and work hard to oust him. Now, of course, we're not literally in an army, but we're going with some colorful metaphors here, so please do bear with me. And yes, Sargon, I understand you don't like viewing yourself as a leader, and you're not a CEO-type leader, but you are certainly a spiritual counselor of a scene that identifies with holding certain principles, and you tolerating, if not actively participating, in a purge of those pointing out severe transgressions against these principles by people who style themselves defenders of said principles, that does give the impression of you being willing to sacrifice your core beliefs if it serves the greater good. To construct a certain utopia, you are willing to pay a price that many are not willing to pay. And the fact that you do this not because of financial interests, but because you consider it an acceptable loss to accomplish a higher goal is what rustles people's jimmies. Now, of course, I don't expect you to concede any of my armchair psychology. That will be ridiculous. I'm not even saying I can thoroughly profile you as an individual, but I can speak for myself when I say that I am very rarely wrong about people, if you'll forgive my endless arrogance. That's why Candid keeps on being brought up, and I believe it is to the credit of the skeptic establishment that this is the only thing they can be properly attacked on, because it does demonstrate a certain firmness of principle and a good track record. All of this does have certain parallels to Gamergate, and I do understand that YouTubers are not journalists who hold up a codified set of ethics, but, like it or not, you will be held to certain standards. Now, regarding Shoe and Skeptic in particular, something that I feel many people are quick to overlook is that they cannot defend themselves. It would literally be illegal to do so in a non-disingenuous way, and I can fully understand why they're not doing it. Because they'd get sued to death by a powerful corporation. Were I in their position, I'd do the same thing. I don't believe for a second that they knew about Candid's more nefarious side when they signed that contract, and I think that had they known about it, they would not have done so. But they got played, or maybe they really needed the money, because people make mistakes, and while I'll never again trust their recommendations, I do bear them no ill will. They have made decisions and must now live with the consequences of those decisions. TJ is a slightly different manner, because I always knew he was a sellout, because he makes this abundantly clear any chance he gets, and I totally believe him. That's why I don't purchase any products he promotes. Let him do it. Bananas are expensive in Seattle, and I can't fault him for wanting them. So to sum this up, people are not complaining about sponsorships, nor are they complaining solely about Candid. They are complaining about the purge of those who would hold those perceived as somewhat of a skeptic establishment accountable, because it demonstrates a will to power over a will to be principled, and the audiences of the skeptic scene do not like that. And in no individual person is this better characterized than in you, Sargon, because you have no financial interest in showing people the smokescreen over the reality behind it, yet that is exactly what you do. For the record, I don't believe you're evil either. Like all of us, you're just a man. Except Riley. She's a woman. I do hope this helped you somewhat comprehend the autistic screeching, as that appears to be what you want, and I'm very much willing to talk about any of this with you. I'm even open to changing my opinions. In the meantime, I have put my money where my mouth is, and pledged my $2 that went to your Patreon each month to harmful opinions instead. That might not be a lot to you, but to me, a man living on the poverty line, and maybe harmful too, that is an amount worth considering. I still won't turn off ad block on for YouTube though. Doesn't hurt me, and even if I disagree, I did consume your content. You should get paid for that.